Hello, my fifth graders. All right, today we're going to be working on the mid-chapter checkpoint. And in this checkpoint, we're going to be doing, I want to say like 18 problems. Some of them are estimating, some of them are finding those equivalent common denominators, all of those types of things. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, for our vocabulary, so far, we have these three words. We have equivalent fractions, common denominator, and common multiple. Denominator, we know, is the number on the bottom. So when we talk about a common denominator, they're saying that the number on the bottom is the same. A common multiple is when a number, let's say 3 and 2, the multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12. The multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So the common multiples are multiples that they have in common, and equivalent fractions are fractions that are the same amount. So 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, which is equivalent to 3/6, right? Okay, so I have to choose those three words or three definitions, and two of them go here. A blank is a number that is a multiple of two or more numbers. So it's telling me that it's a multiple. So this is a common multiple. A common multiple is a number that is a multiple of two or more numbers. So this is a common multiple, 6. Common multiple. A blank is a common multiple of two or more denominators. A common denominator is a common multiple of two or more denominators. Yeah, that is correct. Now, I wouldn't put a common multiple here because then the sentence would say a common multiple is a common multiple. They're never going to give you it. That's never going to be that easy. All right. Now, let's move on to 3 through 5. 3 through 5 is asking us to estimate. And so we're going to use those benchmarks, 0, half, or a whole. 9/8. Well, half of 9 is 4.5. So 8 is closer to 1 than it is to anything else. Half of 7 is 3.5. So 4 is pretty close to that. So this would estimate to be 1 plus a half, which equals 1.5. One thing to be really careful about here is the subtraction versus addition. Make sure you're paying attention to the sign. That gets me almost every time. I add when I'm supposed to subtract, or I subtract when I'm supposed to add. It's very common. Now, 3 stays is 2/5 closer to 0, a half, or a whole. Well, half of 5 is 2.5. So 2 is pretty close to 2.5. So I would say 3 2/5 estimates to be about 2.5 or 3.5. Now 5/8. Half of 8 is 4. So I would say this is a half. 3.5 minus a half is just 3. All right, 5/6 is pretty close to 1. So this is 1 and another 1, or 2. 2/11. Well, half of 11 is like 5.5. 2 is really far from that. So I would say this is 0. So this becomes 2 plus 2 is 4. Now, a lot of this is kind of, especially with estimating, but Think Central is going to look for one answer. You might not have that exact answer. If you're showing your work on a piece of paper, you can show the teacher and say, hey, I didn't get what they got because I said that 5/8 was actually closer to a whole than it was to a half. Whatever it is, if you can explain your reasoning and show that you understand how to estimate, I would give you the point. I can't talk for Miss Grimm, but I would give you the point. All right, so here's the challenging thing. They are not asking for the least common denominator. They're just saying, hey, what is a common denominator? The easiest common denominator is just to multiply them. Straight up, that is the easiest common denominator. However, if I was to be thinking of the least common denominator, I would say 18, because both 6 and 9 have a multiple of 18. So the least, since they don't put least, I'm still going to do 18 because I don't want to have to work that hard. So if I have 1/6 and it's going to become 18, it says write an equivalent fraction. So I have to do that. 6 times 3 is 18. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. 1/9 becomes 18ths. 9 times 2 is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. 8 and 10. The least common denominator or common denominator is 40. You can go with 80. Totally fine. 3/8, if it becomes 40, 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. If I have 3/10 and it becomes 40, 10 times 4 is 40. 3 times 4 is 12. Those are my equivalent fractions. For 9 and 12, so same thing with 9 and 12, I could just choose 9 times 12, or I could think of a common multiple. So if I list them out, I've got 9, 18, 3 is 27, 4 is 36, so 36. So 36 is a common denominator. 1/9, how does it become 36? Well, 9 times 4 is 36. 1 times 4 is 4. 5/12, how does it become 36? Well, 12 times 3 is 36, so 5 times 3 is 15. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. All right, 9 through 11 is asking me to write the number as a product of its prime factors. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, so for 48, 18, and 30, we're going to take those numbers apart until I can't take them apart anymore. So I'm actually going to find a blank spot on my page and do 48. Two numbers that multiply together to get 48 is 4 times 12. Neither of those are prime, so I have to keep going. Two numbers that multiply together to get 4 are 2 times 2. They are prime, so I like to circle them. Numbers that multiply together to get 12 is 4 times 3. You could have said 6 times 2 as well. Now 4 is still not prime, so I take that apart and I get 2 times 2. So these are all of the prime numbers. So the number as a product of its prime factors is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. Does the order matter? Yes. They will mark you wrong if you say 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Order matters. If they mark you wrong, come find me and I will help you out. However, order does matter. 18. Two numbers that multiply to get 18. Well, right here I can see 9 times 2. So let's use that. 2 is prime, so I like to circle it. What two numbers multiply together to get 9? And that's 3 times 3. They are also prime. So when I write these three numbers on the line, I have to go from least to greatest. So 2 times 3 times 3. All right, now 30. 30 is our next number. Two numbers that multiply together to get 30. I know 3 times 10. 3 is prime. Two numbers that multiply to get 10 is 2 times 5. They're prime as well. So with those three numbers, 3, 2, and 5, I need to put them from least to greatest. So 2 times 3 times 5. All right. 12 through 14 is finally just solve it and put your answer in the simplest form. It's always simplified answer. So that's what I'm going to do. I like to set my problem up so it's 11/18 minus 1/6. for some reason, it just helps me to have them one on top of each other. Now, is there a number that both of them can become for my common denominator? So it kind of goes back to 6 through 8. Do these have a common denominator? And they do. It's 18. So that's what I'm going to make them both become. My top number, super easy to get to 18 because it's times 1. My bottom number is a little bit harder. 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 3 is 3. Then I need to remember I'm subtracting. 11, 10, 9, 8. 8 18ths. Are both numbers even? Yes. Divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Okay. Are both numbers even? No. Can I divide by 3? No. Yes. So no. Can I divide by 5? No. 7? No. 11? No. 4/9 is simplified. All right. 2/7 plus 2/5. My only common or my least common denominator here is actually 35. 7 times 5 is 35. 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 7 is 35. 2 times 7 is 14. Now I add 10 plus 14 is 24. My denominator never ever changes unless I'm doing this. Now I ask myself, are both numbers even? No. Can I divide by 3? 4, 5, 6, yes. 5, 6, 7, 8, no. Can I divide by 5? Yes, no. So no. 7? No. 11? No. So this is simplified. 13 is also a weird one. My hand's like sweaty. I think it's because it's Thursday and we were doing our workout. All right. 3/4 minus 3/10. Common denominator is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. 3 times 5 is 15. 10 times 2 is 20. 3 times 2 is 6. Could I have used 40? Absolutely. What I've always told my students is you either get really good at finding the least common denominator or you get really good at simplifying. It's kind of a balance because if I use the least common denominator, chances of simplifying are pretty slim. So 15 minus 6. Well, 6 minus 5 is 1. And then, so 9/20. Are they both even? No. Can I divide by 3? Yes. No. So no. 5? No. 7? No. 11? No. Most likely it's simplified. All right, that's our first page. These next pages are going to kind of be very similar. It's just asking you to do the same thing, but in a word problem to try and confuse you. Sometimes it works. Don't let them confuse you. Okay, so number 15 is confusing in how they have to word a word problem for subtracting fractions. And that's because if I said this picture is how much I had left and I eat 1/4 of that, the answer is different. That's actually a multiplication problem because of means to multiply. So they can't say that. So that's why it says Mrs. Vargas bakes a pie for her book club. The shaded part is how much she had after the meeting. That evening, Mr. Vargas ate 1/4 of the whole pie. As if the pie were whole, then he ate 1/4. So really what they're trying to get you to do is, what's this fraction? This shaded part of 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 8, or I have half a pie. Mr. Vargas eats or takes away 1/4. That's what they're trying to do. Now I have to find a common denominator. 4 is a pretty good one. 2 times 2 is 4. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I can subtract. 2 minus 1 is 1. My denominator does not change unless I'm multiplying. Because my answer has a 1 in it, it's simplifying. All right, 16. Keisha makes a large sandwich for a picnic. She takes half of the sandwich to the picnic. At the picnic, her family eats 3/8 of the whole sandwich. See, it just sounds funny, but it has to do with the fact that they can't say 3/8 of the sandwich she brought to the picnic. So she takes half of a sandwich to the picnic. Her family's taking away 3/8. That's what they want you to do. I need a common denominator of 2 and 8. The best one is 8, because then I only have to really figure out one of the numbers. 2 times 4 is 8. Whatever I do the bottom, I must do the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Now I can subtract. 4 minus 3 is 1, and that denominator does not get subtracted. Because I have a 1 in my number, it's simplified. All right, last problem. Mike is mixing paint for his walls. He mixes a 1/6 gallon blue paint and 5/8 gallon of green paint in a large container. What's the fraction that represents the total paint? So we've got two colors, we're putting them together. Basically addition. 1/6 plus 5/8. Now, I need to figure out a common denominator of 6 and 8. I could do it super easy, just multiply them and get 48. But that is absolutely not my least common denominator. My least common denominator would be 24, pretty sure. 8 times 3 is 24. Whatever I do at the bottom, I must do to the top. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 4 is 24. Whatever I do at the bottom, I must do the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Now I just add my pieces. 4 plus 15 is 19, and my denominator does not change. Simplifying. Are both numbers even? No. Can I divide by 3? No. 5? No. 7? No. 11? No. So 19/24 is most likely simplified. All right, you guys, that is how you do your mid-chapter checkpoint.